And welcome back to the show. Enterprise Community Partners is a national not-for-profit organization on a mission to make a good home possible for the millions of families who don't have one. Well, Enterprise is organized around three central goals: to increase housing supply, advance racial equity, and build resilience and upward mobility. Join me now to share a little bit more. We are pleased to have the Vice President and New York Market Leader of Enterprise Community Partners, Baaba Halm, and we thank you, Baaba, for being with us.
Thank you, Daren. Thank you for the invitation to talk about Enterprise's work.
Yeah. Well, we always hear that home ownership is a part of the American dream, but yet and still, so many people have not yet participated in having a home. I know that that's part of the work that you do in trying to make sure that people can just have that. So a little bit more about your organization for somebody who may not know.
You summarize Enterprise beautifully, that Enterprise is a national nonprofit that works to make a good home possible for the millions of families without one. In New York, Enterprise, which was established in 1987, has committed over $4.3 billion to support the creation and preservation of over 77,000 homes across New York State. And that work is really centered around addressing the housing needs that we see across the state. And you mentioned home ownership and the importance of home ownership. And we recognize how home ownership stabilizes communities. Home ownership creates an opportunity to create and generate wealth to pass down through families and in communities. And homeownership is something that we're working really hard on. It's challenging to create more homeownership in New York just because of the cost of building, the land cost, just the down payment cost, and the housing values in New York State are in and of itself a challenge to creating more homeownership opportunities. But we're steadfast looking at what we can do to support more homeownership here in New York and in the 5 boroughs. Enterprise serves the entire state. We're anchored in New York City, but we're a statewide organization.
And so racial equity is also at the core here. When we talk about New York and you talk about New York City as a whole, we know that people are really dealing with the affordable housing crisis, not being able to really stay where they are, much less be able to buy a home. And racial equity is really key and critical in that. Your organization really tackles this matter. And so how do you deal with the issue of racial equity, particularly when it comes to housing?
So Enterprise is very intentional about the communities that we work with and we serve and the partners that we have. And we recognize even through this pandemic that low income and BIPOC communities really always bear the brunt. They're the communities that are more challenged in terms of finding quality, affordable housing and maintaining that housing, and fighting the economic insecurity that we're all in, and the ongoing challenges that the pandemic has created. And so our intentionality is on finding local partners, affordable housing development providers, community development organizations, supporting their on the ground work to stabilize and work with folks day in and day out who are, challenged. And we do that through a number of different fronts. I talked a little bit about the capital, how much we've committed to create and preserve affordable housing, but we also have program development. We do policy advocacy. All of that is tied into our holistic approach to what we believe we need to help low income, BIPOC communities most in distress, communities most in need for affordable housing.
And so when we talk about communities in need, what do you find to be the biggest need when we talk about affordable housing? We see that, there's a lack of space, but then at the same time, we also find that there is space. We just are not converting it into things that are affordable.
So there certainly is a challenge in what families can afford and what we mean by affordability. And every community is not the same in terms of, how much a family in that particular community can afford for apartment. We know the Bronx is particularly challenged in the sense that it has the highest concentration of folks who are at threat for eviction, that it has the highest concentration of folks who are rent burdened. And so affordability is not the same in New York City. It certainly isn't the same across the state either. And so our approach in the Bronx has been, to offer and support those community-based organizations on the ground. So for example, we have community-based organizations who we are working with, and they've been providing access to the state's emergency rental assistance program, right? That folks can apply for aid to tackle those rent arrears that they may have been accumulated during the pandemic. These community-based organizations are doing program development work, letting folks know about their tenant rights, and working to prevent evictions across the board. So those are some of the ways in which we are working directly in the Bronx. So we are tackling the affordable housing challenges on a number of different fronts.
And so when we talk about some of the other things that you're really engaged in, understanding that racism, segregation plays an important part in how we see housing and equity. We can look across the city, we can look across the state and find how this actually plays out. I know that community development is a strong arm for you. So share with us a bit about community development and how that aims to bridge that gap.
So racism, as we all are becoming very, very acutely aware of, has really helped to foster concentrated poverty and segregation, and has denied housing opportunities in New York and across the nation. Through Enterprise, we are looking at how we tackle those impacts of systematic racism. We're looking at the appraisal system, right? How homes are appraised in low-income communities and devalued in comparison to other neighborhoods with similar housing stock and similar residents, and tackling that head on as a way of addressing the home ownership and the wealth gap. We are looking at intentionally how we dole our own grants. As I said, we support community-based organizations on the ground. And we're intentionally looking at organizations and how they connect to the community, how the leadership of those organizations represent the communities in which they work. And so we're looking at how we assess what's happening to the marketplace, how we're creating affordable housing, how we're leveraging economic opportunity more broadly, and we're connecting to the communities in which our community development organizations are based.
So how do we go about building this resilience, this upward mobility that definitely needs to occur if we're ever going to turn the corner? I think sometimes it's hard to see upward mobility in the face of all the challenges, COVID-19, the unemployment crisis, the fact of what we're trying to deal with these days. How do we get that upward mobility going?
So we look at upward mobility, I think, in two different ways. We're looking at business opportunities for entities, mom and pop businesses, BIPOC developers, affordable housing owners, and then economic opportunities for the individuals. And so Enterprise nationally launched an Equitable Path Forward program in 2020, which is looking to increase the participation of BIPOC developers in affordable housing and bring more BIPOC developers into this space. And we're doing it again by providing loans and grants to get their projects off the ground, to support their pipeline, to help them build their organizational capacity. Again, also understand the policy challenges and the limitations to their entities, those businesses participating in affordable housing, which we know is a booming industry and is ripe for growth. And then on the individual opportunities, we're looking to make sure that folks are aware of the job opportunities within the affordable housing sector. And we're happy to be launching a Housing Career Pathways program in the next couple of weeks. And that program will be working with a workforce development provider who will be recruiting and training individuals for entry-level positions within the affordable housing sector on the property management side. And we look at all of that to say, economic opportunity sometimes is limited by if people even know about the opportunity, if people know how to navigate the space, if they're able to have the fortitude and the wherewithal to understand who they should know and how they can get in and how they can grow within the space. And we're trying to demystify affordable housing. We're trying to make sure that the opportunities are broadly known, broadly shared, and that there's skills training that is had, and there's connections that are being made between the individuals and the businesses that are looking for opportunity.
Well, over your 40-year history, Enterprise has invested more than $44 billion and created and preserved more than 781,000 homes in all 50 states. That's a major work. What would you say is the key to your success in this area?
It's having the boots on the ground. It's having those relationships with the partners. Enterprises work is really only able to be further through the partnerships with partners, local partners. And so Enterprise New York, which I lead, we have close working relationships with the state, for example, HCR, with the city's housing agencies and housing administrations, and with those local community partners. Who help us understand what the needs are in particular communities, who present their particular ideas about how to grow and further affordable housing, or what supports they need to preserve the housing, the affordable housing that they may have in their particular communities. That has been the key to Enterprise's success. Those partnerships, making sure that we are attuned and we are, innovating community by community, if you will. And so there are 11 Enterprise offices, right beyond the New York office, and in every office, the work looks different, and how we leverage the relationships and support the community organizations differs, but it is finely tuned to the needs that we see in those particular communities.
And so, if somebody wants to get in contact with you and be connected to some of the services and the services and resources that you offer, how do they go about doing that?
Well, they can follow us on Twitter. For those of folks who are involved with social media, it's enterprise_NYC. They can also find us on the web at enterprisecommunity.org.
And coming up this year, do you have anything special that you're looking forward to?
We are going to be celebrating Enterprise's 40th year anniversary national and 35 years in New York. Enterprise New York was started in 1987, and we're looking to host a year-long series of engagements around our 40th year anniversary across the nation, and hold the New York Enterprise Gala in November. So stay tuned for details on that, and to learn how we are going to be celebrating Enterprise.
Yeah, pretty exciting, pretty exciting. And so in New York, obviously a lot of challenges. What do you deem to be the most front and center challenge that you're tackling right now?
So the growing homelessness issue in the city is very concerning to all. We're excited that we have a new mayor who's just appointed as housing team. And so understanding how the city administration, what approach they're going to take and how they set their housing priorities is an area that we're paying attention to. We're also working aggressively on home ownership. As you said at the beginning of this interview, there is a need for more support around home ownership, especially for low income and BIPOC communities, so they can stay in New York, the place that they work, and so that they don't feel like they're being forced out to move to the Poconos, or most recently I heard Delaware, that people are considering moving to Delaware. We want New Yorkers to be able to stay in New York and to be able to afford a home in New York. And so that is a challenge, a priority area for us as well.
All right. Well, Baaba Halm, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much for being with us and sharing. Baaba Halm is the Vice President and New York Market Leader of Enterprise Community Partners, more than 40 years in the business. Thanks so much for being with us, and we appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
All righty. Well, we want you to stay connected to us right here on the Social Justice Forums. We do have more, so don't go away. We'll be back after this message.